I pulled into my driveway after a long week of travel and froze because 2 police cars blocked the entrance, their lights flashing silently, and through the front window I saw my sister standing in the living room with a thick folder, my mother hovering behind her, and an officer nodding as if everything was routine, and my stomach dropped because I realized instantly they had filed an emergency petition claiming I was unfit to care for my children and attempting to seize control of my home and finances. My legs shook as I stepped out of the car, gripping the keys like a lifeline. "What is happening?" I shouted, and my sister turned, her smile calm and deliberate, the kind she always uses to make everyone believe she's reasonable, while she manipulates the narrative behind the scenes. "We're just here to ensure the children's safety," she said sweetly. "Your mother was very concerned about their well-being." Concerned. I knew that tone. I could hear it, the same tone she had used for years to manipulate family gatherings, whispering to my nieces and nephews that I couldn't be trusted, that I was irresponsible, that my parenting was inadequate. Safe from what? I demanded, my voice shaking. "From neglect, from instability," my mother said, eyes flitting between me and the officers. "You've been unable to manage the household, and the kids are at risk." Risk. The accusation cut deeper than any slap or scream could. I've been a single parent for years, paying bills on time, making sure my children eat, sleep, attend school, and have every opportunity one can give them. And yet here they were, trying to frame me as incapable, criminal, and unfit in one coordinated effort. The officer gestured for me to step back. "Sir, we are enforcing a court order," he said politely. "Please comply. Any resistance could result in arrest." I swallowed hard, feeling the weight of helplessness pressing on me, and stepped back. Through the window, my children, Jake and Lily, were sitting on the couch, pale, holding their stuffed animals, eyes wide, confused by the adults who had suddenly invaded their home. I had mere moments to gather evidence, to figure out what had been filed against me, and to prepare for the confrontation I knew I would face in court. I immediately accessed my home security system and began reviewing footage. Every breakfast, every school drop-off, every homework session, every bedtime ritual. I compiled screenshots of financial transactions proving I had paid bills and saved for the children's needs, emails from teachers praising their progress, and text messages from my spouse confirming my responsible parenting. But the twists kept coming. I discovered that my mother had submitted notarized forms claiming temporary authority over my finances, and my sister had coordinated with a former friend of the family to act as a witness to support their petition. On top of that, they had altered emails and text messages to make me appear negligent, cherry-picking minor mistakes from years ago and presenting them as evidence. My head was spinning, but I knew I had to remain calm. I gathered every piece of digital evidence, every witness statement from neighbors, friends, and colleagues who could attest to my diligent care of the children. I created a timeline showing my consistent attention and debunking every false claim. I even retrieved a photo series from my home camera showing my mother coaching my children to repeat certain phrases that made me look incompetent. On the day of the emergency hearing, I presented security footage, financial records, emails, and witness statements. My mother and sister tried to frame themselves as protectors of the children, but the judge could see through the manipulation. Then came the revelation that turned the entire room silent. A secretly recorded video showing my mother instructing my sister on how to frame me, guiding the children to speak certain lines, and even rehearsing testimony for court. The judge paused, scrutinized every frame, and said, "Manipulation of a child to influence custody proceedings and falsifying documents is a serious offense." By the end of the session, the temporary custody order was reversed, my children were returned to my care, and strict boundaries were established: supervised visits, documented communications, and restricted access to finances. Over the following weeks, I taught Jake and Lily to recognize manipulation and deception, explaining age-appropriately that some adults may lie or distort facts to gain control, and how to observe evidence and trust facts over words. I installed additional home security measures, updated passwords, and archived all communications with my mother and sister to protect against future attempts at manipulation. Nights were sleepless, reviewing every detail and anticipating potential challenges, but I knew that vigilance was necessary to protect my children and our household. I reflected on years of subtle manipulation, whispered comments, and selective exaggerations my mother had used to undermine me, all building toward this moment of attempted legal takeover. This experience reinforced hard truths. Family can be deceptive, appearances can be weaponized, and protecting children may require confronting lies directly, gathering irrefutable evidence, and standing firm, even if it risks permanent family estrangement. I spent the next few hours sitting in my car, laptop balanced on my knees, going through every security clip I could find. Every school drop-off, every bedtime story, every soccer practice was logged with timestamps, showing beyond doubt that I had been consistently caring for Jake and Lily. I saved emails from teachers confirming attendance, progress, and good behavior. Even small messages from the pediatrician noting that the kids were healthy and well-adjusted were added to the folder. Each piece of evidence built a solid wall against the narrative my mother and sister were trying to construct. My mind kept replaying moments from the past few years, my mother commenting to neighbors about how I never have time for the kids, whispering to Lily about how mom knows best, while I was working 2 jobs just to keep our household afloat, my sister sending selective screenshots to Mark, twisting my words and actions into negligence. They had spent years crafting a perfect story, a facade of concern and morality, while hiding the real motive: control over my life, my assets, and most importantly, my children. By mid-afternoon, I had organized everything into a single digital dossier, categorized by type, date, and relevance. I checked each video for clarity, each document for authenticity, and every witness statement for credibility. I even prepared a clear narrative for the judge, outlining the manipulations, falsifications, and coercions in chronological order. Then came the confrontation. When I returned home under the escort of a neutral officer, my mother and sister tried to speak, their voices polite but tight. "Daniel, we just want what's best for the children," my mother said. I held up my folder. "I have the evidence," I said calmly. "Every lie, every document, every attempt to manipulate the court. It's all documented." Their faces tightened. My sister's confident smile faltered for the first time. The officer guided me inside, and I began showing them parts of the footage. My mother instructing Lily to repeat phrases for court, my sister coaching Mark on how to present evidence in a way that misrepresented reality. Their protestations grew weaker as I explained the financial documents, showing payments I had made on time, money saved for emergencies, and bills that had been completely transparent. The truth was undeniable. When the hearing started, the judge reviewed my dossier in detail. My mother attempted to cast herself as the protector of the children, and my sister repeated her rehearsed lines about concern and responsibility. But the videos, emails, and financial records left no room for doubt. The judge asked pointed questions about the notarized documents, the timing of communications, and the patterns of coaching the children had recorded. Each time my mother or sister tried to deflect, the evidence contradicted them. By the end of the hearing, the temporary custody order was rescinded, full custody was returned to me, and restrictions were placed on both my mother and sister. Supervised visits only, documented communication, and strict limits on financial interference. After the court proceedings, I sat with Jake and Lily on the couch, explaining gently that sometimes adults make mistakes or act unfairly, even those we love. We discussed how to notice manipulation, to observe evidence and facts, and to trust their own judgment when something feels wrong. I felt a wave of relief as they nodded, understanding enough to recognize that they had been drawn into a false narrative and that our bond remained intact. In the following weeks, I implemented additional safeguards: security cameras, password-protected accounts, and a detailed log of every interaction. I maintained contact with the teachers, pediatricians, and neighbors, ensuring that any false claims could immediately be countered with documented proof. Reflecting on the past, I realized how carefully they had built the manipulation. Years of whispering, selective storytelling, and emotional pressure. Every casual comment, every exaggeration, every small act of control had led to this legal attempt to take my children. Yet, by staying calm, gathering evidence, and acting strategically, I protected my family and restored safety and trust. The ordeal taught me harsh truths. Family can be deceptive, appearances can be weaponized, and sometimes protecting your children requires vigilance, evidence, and courage to confront those who misuse trust. I share this story because I want others to understand that it's possible to overcome manipulations, protect loved ones, and restore justice, even when those closest to you attempt to rewrite reality. My question to the audience is this: if your own family tried to manipulate the law to take your children, would you confront them directly, gather every piece of evidence, and assert boundaries even at the cost of relationships, or would you stay silent, hoping to preserve peace, knowing that trust can be used as a weapon and children's safety is paramount? After the hearing, I didn't immediately return home. I parked a few blocks away and watched the house from my car, trying to process everything. The tension, the fear, the betrayal. It all pressed on me like a weight I couldn't shake. Memories surfaced. My mother subtly undermining me when I tried to help Lily with her school projects, whispering doubts into her ear while smiling to anyone watching. My sister sending selective screenshots to Mark to support her false narrative, showing only moments of frustration and presenting them as neglect. I realized just how meticulously they had built the case against me over years, slowly conditioning Lily to question my authority, to doubt my decisions, and to see her grandmother and aunt as superior and omniscient. My phone buzzed. It was my attorney. "Daniel," she said, voice brisk, "I've reviewed everything again. We have the timeline, the messages, the videos. You're solid. But you need to prepare for the possibility that they will try to escalate, that they will claim procedural errors, or even manipulate new witnesses." I closed my eyes, imagining the upcoming weeks of scrutiny, testimonies, cross-examinations. But beneath the anxiety, a sense of determination formed. I had to protect my children not just legally but emotionally. I went home, entered quietly, and found Lily and Jake waiting in the living room. Their eyes were wide with apprehension. "Mom," Lily whispered. I pulled her into a hug. "Everything is okay now. They can't take you away." "Not ever," I said, my voice steady, though my chest still ached from the adrenaline and fear. Over the next days, I reviewed every aspect of our lives that my mother and sister could twist into evidence. Daily routines, school schedules, financial transactions, interactions with neighbors and friends. I documented every detail, time-stamped and cross-referenced, building an impenetrable record. I reached out to teachers, pediatricians, and even coaches, requesting written statements verifying my consistent care, involvement, and attention. Each document, each statement was another brick in the wall shielding my family from their manipulation. Then came a twist I hadn't anticipated. A neighbor approached me privately, revealing that my mother had been visiting our home when I wasn't present, observing and taking notes, possibly coaching Lily without my knowledge. This revelation made my blood run cold, but it also reinforced my determination to gather everything, to leave no gaps in our defense. I installed additional security cameras, ensuring that any future attempts at manipulation would be recorded in real time. My sister tried to call repeatedly, leaving messages alternating between feigned concern and veiled threats. I didn't answer. I also discovered attempts to access my online accounts, email, banking, school portals, suggesting they were trying to fabricate evidence of negligence or financial mismanagement. Each attempt was blocked, logged, and documented. Weeks later, the next court session began. My mother and sister arrived confident, assuming the previous hearing had shaken me, but I presented the meticulously compiled evidence. The security footage, emails, timestamps, witness statements, and financial records. The judge examined each piece carefully. My mother tried to manipulate her demeanor, crying on cue, portraying herself as concerned and reasonable, while my sister repeated her rehearsed lines about protecting the children. But the evidence was overwhelming. The secretly recorded footage showing my mother coaching Lily to repeat false statements, combined with the falsified documents and their attempts to manipulate the court, left them exposed. The judge's words were precise. Manipulating a child, falsifying documents, and attempting to influence judicial proceedings are serious offenses. The children shall remain with their mother, and strict restrictions are placed on access and financial interactions. Relief washed over me as the weight lifted. Lily ran to my side, hugging me tightly, and Jake followed, leaning against my shoulder. In that moment, I felt a renewed sense of purpose, not just to protect them from legal threats, but to fortify their understanding of trust, truth, and evidence. Over the following months, I reinforced routines, documented interactions, educated my children about recognizing manipulation, and implemented permanent safeguards. I reviewed every instance of potential manipulation from my mother and sister, reflecting on how subtle, seemingly innocuous actions over the years had built up to a coordinated attempt to seize control. I realized that small comments, strategic exaggerations, selective omissions, and emotional pressure had created a narrative they believed they could use against me. But with preparation, evidence, and a clear understanding of my rights, I had neutralized their plan. Nights were still difficult, reliving confrontations, ensuring that my children felt safe, reviewing evidence for potential future challenges, but the clarity of purpose grounded me. I shared age-appropriate truths with Lily and Jake about the dangers of manipulation, teaching them to observe, question, and recognize discrepancies between words and actions. They learned that appearances can be deceptive and that trust must be earned through consistent, honest behavior. I reflected on the lessons learned. Family can be deceptive, appearances can be weaponized, and protecting loved ones may require meticulous documentation, strategic planning, and courage to confront lies directly. I share this story to ask the audience: if your own family attempted to manipulate the law, falsify documents, and turn your children against you, would you confront it directly, gather every piece of evidence, and assert boundaries to protect your family, even at the cost of strained or broken relationships? Or would you remain silent, hoping to preserve a false peace, risking your children's safety and your rights? This story is a testament to vigilance, preparation, and the resilience required to defend the truth and maintain the safety and well-being of those who depend on you, even when betrayal comes from the people who should love and protect you the most. After the court decision, I returned home with Lily and Jake, each step feeling heavier than the last, carrying not only the relief of victory but the weight of what had been uncovered. Years of manipulation, lies, and betrayal carefully orchestrated by my mother and sister. The house was quiet, almost too quiet, and I knew the peace would be temporary unless I took further steps to protect my family. I started by reorganizing the house for safety and transparency. Cameras in every common area, logs of all digital communications with my mother and sister, and password-protected accounts for finances and school portals. I wanted to remove any possibility for them to fabricate evidence again. Over the next week, I spoke with neighbors who had witnessed past interactions, my mother coaching Lily, my sister passing comments to neighbors framing me as distracted, and recorded their statements for potential future court reference. Meanwhile, Lily began asking questions about what had happened. "Mom, why did Grandma say those things about me?" she asked, eyes wide with confusion. I sat down with her on the couch, holding her close. Sometimes adults make mistakes, or they try to manipulate situations to get what they want. It's not your fault, and it doesn't change how much I love you. You've always been safe and cared for. Jake, listening silently, nodded, processing the explanation with the seriousness of a 10-year-old who's just glimpsed the complexity of adult deceit. In the evenings, I reviewed the security footage and compiled it alongside financial records, emails, and notarized documents, creating a thorough, organized archive that could withstand any future attempt at manipulation. Every interaction, every minor detail, every daily routine was meticulously documented. I even included the small moments that my mother and sister might have tried to twist, like helping the kids with homework or preparing dinner, because those moments proved my consistent care. Then came the unexpected twist. One evening, I discovered that my mother had tried to contact a family friend to act as a witness for another potential claim, trying to insert someone else into the narrative. I documented the attempt and informed my attorney. The pattern was clear. They would continue to attempt manipulation unless boundaries were strictly enforced. I implemented a routine with Lily and Jake that reinforced transparency and stability. After school, homework together, dinner, brief outdoor activity, and bedtime routines with consistent check-ins and documentation. This not only provided security but also created a positive, controlled environment where they could rebuild trust in their daily life. Over the following weeks, I continued to reinforce the lessons, teaching the children how to recognize manipulation, understand discrepancies between words and actions, and trust facts and evidence over persuasive words. We discussed how sometimes adults may lie or exaggerate for personal gain, even people we love, and that the truth is supported by evidence and consistent behavior, not claims alone. My mother and sister attempted occasional communications, alternating between feigned concern and veiled threats, but I ignored them, maintaining the documented boundaries. Any attempt to contact the children without supervision was denied and logged. Slowly, the children began to relax, understanding that I was the constant, reliable figure in their lives, and the threats from my mother and sister no longer created the same fear. I also began rebuilding my own emotional strength. Long walks, therapy sessions, and support from friends who had witnessed the manipulation over the years. This period of reflection allowed me to see patterns I had missed: subtle undermining, selective storytelling, and the incremental buildup that had culminated in the court case. By recognizing these patterns, I could better anticipate future attempts and prepare both myself and the children. Looking back, I realized the importance of preparation and vigilance. The emotional labor of documenting evidence, maintaining routines, and educating the children was enormous, but it was necessary to protect their well-being and assert my rights as a parent. The ordeal taught me that appearances can be deceiving, that family can betray trust, and that protecting children may require both strategic planning and emotional resilience. Ultimately, the experience strengthened our bond as a family. Lily and Jake learned the importance of observation, critical thinking, and understanding the difference between manipulation and reality. I regained not only legal authority but emotional control and confidence in my role as a parent. I share this story to ask the audience: if your own family tried to manipulate the law and children against you, would you gather evidence, assert boundaries, and protect your children, even if it risks permanent estrangement, or would you remain silent, risking your children's well-being to maintain a facade of peace? This story demonstrates the necessity of vigilance, preparation, and courage when facing deception from those closest to you, and shows that truth, evidence, and consistency can protect what matters most, even against betrayal. Weeks after the court victory, life slowly began to settle into a new rhythm, one I had fought fiercely to protect. Lily and Jake were laughing again during homework, building forts in the living room, and even asking me to join their video games. A simple but profound reminder that our family, though tested, was still intact. I installed additional security measures in every room, not because I wanted to live in fear, but because I had learned that vigilance is the only way to safeguard against those who would manipulate reality for their own advantage. I created a comprehensive archive of every interaction, every financial transaction, every message, and every school report. An unassailable record that documented not only my dedication but the falsehoods my mother and sister had tried to weave. Every time Lily asked why Grandma and Aunt were no longer coming to visit unsupervised, I explained gently but clearly: some people make choices that aren't safe. That's why we have rules now, and why we keep our routines safe. Jake nodded solemnly, understanding more than his age suggested, absorbing lessons about honesty, evidence, and the difference between words and actions. The healing wasn't just for the children. I spent quiet evenings reflecting, recognizing how years of subtle undermining, whispers of doubt, and strategic exaggerations had been designed to isolate me and erode my confidence. Those reflections were painful, but they strengthened my resolve. I would not allow anyone to weaponize trust, love, or routine against us again. Unexpectedly, a few family friends reached out privately, apologizing for having turned a blind eye or believed false narratives. Their quiet support reminded me that some relationships could be repaired, cautiously, with transparency and mutual understanding. I met with my attorney one last time to ensure that all documents, videos, and testimonies were properly filed, creating a legal fortress around our family. Every interaction with my mother and sister was limited to supervised meetings and documented communications. I could no longer trust them with private moments or unsupervised access, and I made that boundary clear to the children as well. In those weeks, I also focused on my own emotional recovery. I sought therapy to process the betrayal, the fear, and the overwhelming stress. I took long walks, journaled nightly, and allowed myself to grieve the family I thought I had, the illusions that had been shattered, and the years lost to manipulation. Yet within that grief was resilience. I had proven to the court, to my children, and to myself that truth, preparation, and courage can overcome manipulation, no matter how deeply it is woven into family dynamics. I also worked with Lily and Jake to establish healthy routines and an understanding of boundaries. We created a daily checklist for schoolwork, chores, and bedtime rituals, adding small celebrations for each completed item to reinforce structure and reliability. More importantly, I explained the concept of manipulation in simple terms. That sometimes people lie or exaggerate to get what they want, but evidence, observation, and honest communication reveal the truth. Gradually, laughter returned to our home. The children played freely, made plans with friends, and even began to express themselves more openly, asking questions about events they had witnessed and the court proceedings. I answered honestly, in ways appropriate for their ages, reinforcing their understanding that honesty, evidence, and integrity matter. Looking back, I realized that my mother and sister had underestimated one thing: my persistence, my dedication, and my unwillingness to allow fear or intimidation to dictate the lives of my children. Their attempts to manipulate, control, and intimidate ultimately revealed themselves in the open, and their failure became the foundation for a stronger, safer household. Now, when I walk through the living room, hearing Lily and Jake plan their next adventure or giggle over a shared joke, I feel the hard-earned relief and quiet pride of a parent who has protected her family through vigilance, strategy, and unwavering commitment. The ordeal taught me that appearances can deceive, that loyalty can be weaponized, and that safeguarding children may require extraordinary effort and courage, including facing those you once trusted most. I share this story not only to document what happened but to challenge the audience. If your own family attempted to manipulate the law, fabricate evidence, or influence your children against you, would you confront them directly, gather every possible piece of evidence, and assert boundaries to protect your family, even at the cost of relationships? Or would you remain silent in the hope of preserving a false peace, risking your children's safety and your rights? The lesson is clear. Vigilance, preparation, and courage are essential when protecting those you love, and truth, consistency, and evidence are the ultimate safeguards against betrayal, no matter how deep the deception runs within a family.